this week in the Regency, it's fashions for December. And I'm finding myself absolutely fascinated by the fabrics because we're talking about winter in Britain. I mean, London's in the south, but it still gets pretty cold. I know, live there. And yet the fabrics that we're seeing this month in La Belle Assemblée are very light. And for me, it's really reinforced this idea of privilege. That these dresses were intended for people who, although they say it's a walking dress, are not actually going to go walking. Not in December in the city. They are very light. They're intended to go from your front door to your carriage, and from your carriage to a friend's front door, Almax or a church, but not further than that. These are not dresses for walking in Hyde Park in winter. So I found that really interesting. It very much reinforces how different the lives were of people who were in the top 10,000. So our first dress is French, which is kind of funny when you see all the elements of it. It's a walking dress, and a walking dress is just a day dress. Indian muslin frock. So muslin, as you know, very light cotton fabric with flounces of broad lace. Well, the lace will be a little bit heavy, but lots of holes for the wind to come through. Blue hat of raw net silk en rouleau. Now, if you look closely at the hat, you'll see these lines going across the top, and that is the rolled silk. Interestingly, they're not talking about the shape. I mean, I looked at this and thought, it's a top hat, but it's not described that way. It's just a hat. And the difference between a hat and a bonnet, as far as I can figure out, is that the bonnet has the sloping rim. So it comes down around your face, whereas the hat is flat. Cashmere shawl. Now, it's spelled cashmere, but in fact it's referring to cashmere and what we now call cashmere wool. So it's goat's wool. It's from the underwool of a particular kind of goat. It's an Indian shawl at this point with a blue border, a cashmere shawl with a blue border. Sash of Scotch plaid, and it's interesting. I've noticed that the word tartan is only used when it's a Scottish costume. English ruff. So we've got an Indian shawl, a sash from Scotland, and an English ruff, all together making up this walking dress for the French. Half boots of French grey kid and white chamois leather. We can see that the hem, as we've seen recently in 1819, is a focal point. It seems to be coming higher up the leg. And the colours of the sash and the shawl don't really seem to go together to me. I don't know. They don't seem to go together with the hat. So this is one of the least coordinated in terms of colour outfit that we've seen all year. Our second dress is an English walking dress, a round dress of fine cambric. And again, cambric, originally linen and later by this period also cotton, but a very fine, light fabric when it's described as fine cambric. It's a densely woven. It's quite tight, so at least it wouldn't have quite so much of the wind as muslin, but still it's quite a light fabric. With embroidered flounces of muslin, each flounce headed by a row of beautiful embroidery. Velvet Spencer. I thought, oh, good velvet. Somebody's in warm clothing finally. And then I looked at the shape of the Spencer. And it keeps you warm to your underbust. but the bulk of the body is not at all warmed by it. And this is, of course, the main difference between a spencer and a pelisse. A spencer is short, a pelisse is long. Velvet spencer of bright geranium, terminated in front with points à la fichu. And a fichu is we've talked about, is a triangular piece, usually of lawn, embroidered lawn or lace. It comes down over your décolletage and keeps you modest. Tied in front with small bows of ribbon. Bonnet of either granite silk or spotted velvet. Now, I'm assuming here that granite silk is actually a colour because I can't find it anywhere as a phrase. So if anybody knows, let me know if there is a kind of silk called granite silk. But otherwise, I'm assuming colour. Trimmed with the new plume silk trimming, with full bouquet of flowers on the left side. The hair arranged à la Montespan. Now, okay, interesting. Let's go have a look. Montespan is actually an actual mountain. It's a mountain on Elba, which is the island that Napoleon was exiled to initially before he escaped. So it's part of Italy. It's a small island off Italy. And this is what it looks like. This is the mountain. I thought, well, maybe it's related to the traditional dress of people, you know, the way women dress traditionally on Elba. Went looking. Yeah, no, the headdresses, there was very much a scarf over a very tightly pulled back hair, so I've got no idea what they came up with that name, but that's Montespan. And then we get to the tricky bit here. Ermine muff. Gloves of pale yellow with variegated half. So the muff. What's a muff? A muff is usually made of fur, but not always. You can make it out of any, like velvet, for example. And it's something to put your hands in. Just put them in and keep them warm. And this muff, I don't believe in this muff. For a start, it's enormous. Now, they were having enormous muffs at this time, it's true. But ermine was the most expensive fur. And to make an ermine muff like this would have been unbelievable. I'll explain. This is an ermine stoat. Yes, members of the weasel family. Stoats, so cute. Quite vicious, but so cute. And they're small predators, basically. And they turn white in winter. What this means is that the ermine fur is very fluffy, it's very soft, it's very beautiful, not like chinchilla, but it turned white. And so it's only available for a few months a year. And you can see they're quite small. So you need a lot of them to make a garment. And ermine, for that reason, has always been the preserve of the very, very wealthy all through history. And here we have an example of a cloak, half cloak made out of ermine. And this was owned by a king in Serbia, Peter I. And I want you to look at the pattern of tails. So those black bits are the end of the ermine tail. You can see it here. But that's how you know you've got the real thing, rather than something that's been vaguely sandy and bleached. And that's why they include the tail in the garment. And when we look at this muff, this is another reason I don't believe it. there's too many tails. So I don't think this garment actually existed before this picture was created. I think Mrs. Bell, who is of course where the frocks come from, I think Mrs. Bell wants to sell ermine muffs because they're very, very, very expensive, but also because they're so exclusive. And I think she proposed putting them into this drawing because there are too many tails there for it to be real or to be drawn from life. So I'm hoping that's true because obviously I'm not that keen on doing something like this for the purpose of adornment, but it does bring up this issue that at this period, a lot of things were hunted for the purpose of adornment rather than for food. And some of those things were hunted to extinction, some were hunted almost to extinction, the ermine stoke being one of them. And it's not until much later in the century that people start seeing things as being problematic about this. You know, like it's not until we get things like the passenger pigeon in the US appearing that we start to find people speaking out against it. And so at this point in the Regency, it never occurs to anybody they shouldn't kill a bird, put feathers in their hand. It's not until the 1820s that the RSPCA is formed. So it's an interesting thing to have to deal with when you're creating characters and stories set there. But in terms of fur, a lot of people wore fur because the heating was so bad and it was warm. But this kind of conspicuous consumption, quite small animals with fur, that's very much the privilege. So much so that ermine was in the House of Lords was specific to certain levels of nobility, and others couldn't wear it. What about the lace? This is Valenciennes lace. It's very beautiful. It's very expensive still. It was made initially in Valenciennes in France. It's a bobbin lace. This is how you make it. It takes this kind of nature motif was where we were in the Regency. We had flowers and leaves and so on. And that background, that net background in a diamond shape is how you know it's Valenciennes there. But because it was so difficult to do. So that's fashions for December. These girls scurrying from house to coach in their incredibly light, somewhat effectively summer dresses, except they've got long sleeves and high necks, while washing their hands into a very, very expensive plushie made out of ermine. There's a lesson in both the benefits of privilege, but also how far people will go to stay in fashion. This week in the Regency. I'm Elizabeth Leggett. I'll see you next week in the Regency.